Hi, welcome to Storytime with David Booker. I appreciate you being here. Just got a couple of minutes before we begin. So I just want to thank you for being here and let you know I've got one and two of Sheriff in a Small Town already out. I am right now in the process of publishing book three of that, and we're going to do one more reading next week. And then we're going to move to Sheriff in a Small Town number three, a new sheriff. So that will that will be our reading next. So after that, I think I'm going to go back and reread some of these earlier books that I've written. As you can see, there's a few of them. I'm right now working on another Soul Man novel, and a lot of people have asked me, well, where do you get this stuff? Where does these come from? And they're pretty much, I've gotten the Sheriff in a Small Town came from a friend of ours, a waitress at the restaurant, saying, well, what do you think about doing this? I was like, well, yeah, okay, good. That's a good idea. And that's what I've done and enjoyed writing that. So this book is by a friend of mine, Steve Wolf. He's over in England. And it is probably one of my favorite books out of my collection here. So we're going to do chapter 18, Cleared for Takeoff. Wrangle! The cry was urgent. There was a sound of shattering glass as something hit the floor, and seconds later, the thud of feet clambering up the flight of stairs filled the air. Here, Mother Nature, said Frango, wondering what the emergency was. His thin, pale body was shaking from exertion. Mother Nature had made a number of improvements to her personal cloud, the latest being a fully functional kitchen. However, she was most displeased with the elevated position of the oven. In her words, it just won't do. It's far too high. Wrangle obtained a foldable step, which was met with equal disapproval. She was convinced her assistant wanted her to have an accident. From the raised chair in her throne room, she peered over her glasses at her panting assistant. You look tired. Where's my milk? I was making it, said Frangle in protest. Well, so where is it? On the kitchen floor. When you shouted, I thought something was wrong and I dropped it in my haste to attend to you. Mother Nature tutted. I can only assume that glass shards are scattered across the floor. Frangle nodded. You had better clear it up promptly. Now go and see to your mess and bring me my warm glass of milk in an unbroken glass. Wrangle nodded again, clearly arguing with her was a waste of time and energy. Dejected, he made his way back down the stairs and prepared another glass. Moments later, he reappeared and placed it on a small table next to Mother Nature's chair. She nodded and sipped the white liquid and winced. Wrangle, it's too hot. You always make it too hot. I shall now have to let it cool. Wrangle looked to the floor and counted his feet. He had two. He shrugged. Mother Nature tutted again and turned her attention to the race. She peered through a gap in the clouds and magnified the live image from Mother's Landing. Oh, it would appear that Team Cogs and Clocks are in trouble. Wrangle nodded. But Administrator Copperfeather is yet to arrive. Wrangle, go and order our policeman to hurry up, will you? There may be an arrest to make. Is that an order from me? Of course. I can't be seen to intervene. And how should our friendly policeman hurry up? Mother Nature gave a Frangle a long, hard stare, and her green eyes glinting with a solution. Reissue his license. Frangle stepped back with a horrified look. Are you sure? After what happened last time? The disapproving look from Mother Nature was enough for Frangle to understand she was indeed sure. With a click of her fingers, Frangle vanished. The two stagecoach drivers did not spare the horses as they crashed along the rough, stony track. The occasional potholes encouraging the occupants of the coaches to momentarily leave their seats and switch places. Ouch! Copperfeather rubbed his bald head for the umpteenth time. He turned and smiled at Misty. I always crack my head when traveling in these things. Couldn't you have just driven a car or even fly or something? Misty was dumbfounded. Why on earth are we traveling in this heat from the 18th century? Copperfeather sighed and stared out the window for a moment. I was grounded. Grounded? I don't understand. I was once a pilot, but Mother Nature grounded me. I'm only allowed vehicles with a maximum of 2 horsepower. Misty smiled at Copperfeather and patted his ease. I'm sorry to hear that. Why did she ground you? Administrator Copperfeather turned a shade red with embarrassment. I had a few incidents, and Mother Nature banned me from driving anything powered by an engine. Missy's face was a mixture of anxiety and happiness. The stagecoach was bouncing hard. So, does your ban prevent you from driving this stagecoach? Mr. Copperfeather's face strained a collar. I have to go. And he clambered out of the door and climbed up to the driver's seat, perched high above the horses. After grabbing the reins and bringing the coach under control, Copperfeather sighed. He had been Mother Nature's first policeman, and in his spare time he had learned the art of aviation. In the early years, things had been going great until he began experiencing, technical difficulties, which led to a string of incidences. Following his first mishap, when he had mangled a light aircraft that ended upside down in the field, an angry bull took offense at his landing maneuver and introduced his horns to Copperfeather's backside. An emergency meeting with Mother Nature ensued, with the local farmers and the residents of a town he had once destroyed demanding the policeman have his license revoked. And it was revoked with little hesitation. Mr. Copperfeather's only form of transportation now was either pedal power or limited horsepower. He sighed again. The 2 horses in front of him The 2 horses in front pulled the carriage and its crew smartly along the leafy, bumpy track that ran adjacent to the sea. He stretched his large forehead and rubbed his friendly, unshaven face, and then reached into his lunchbox. After quick rummage, he found a small, square-shaped piece of tinfoil that contained his tuna and lettuce sandwich and began to unwrap it. A small piece of folded paper dropped into his lap. He unfolded it and read the one word it contained in capital letters. Stop! Not knowing what it meant, he ignored it, shrugged his shoulders, and shoved a wedge of bread into his mouth. From nowhere, a small, skinny figure appeared on the dusty track in front of him and thrust out the palm of his hand with a degree of confidence. His other hand was planted behind his back, and he had a look of authority. Seeing the figure in his path, Copperfeather screamed in obscenity, his eyes widening in fright, and began gagging on a piece of bread that had lodged itself in his throat. Get out of the way, the copper spluttered. He yanked hard on the reins, applying the handbrake at the same time, still choking on the bread. The horse had protested, and the coach began to sway from side to side. What is going on up there? Misty demanded from inside the coach as she was tossed from side to side. The small, spindling man standing in the path of the charging stagecoach suddenly lost his nerve and dived into a bush. The coach skidded, stones peppering the wood paneling at the ground to a halt. Copperfeather jumped from the driver's bench and landed on his back, dislodging the bread in his throat. As the second stagecoach, driven by the cool, calm George, pulled up behind him. Able to breathe once more, Copperfeather leapt up and raced towards the bush where a pair of kicking feet protruded, accompanied by a dull moaning. Are you all right? said Copperfeather, looking a little out of sorts. No, I am not, was a mumbled response. Get me out of here, will you? Oh, sorry, will do. Copperfeather wrapped his beefy hands around the little man's ankles and eased him from under the bush. He noted the sandals and wondered whether it had been a conscious decision on the part of the wearer to team them with knee-high socks. The policeman shrugged and slid his body out of the foliage. Standing up, the little man patted down his shirt and adjusted his short trousers. Feeling the bald head for any bruises, he gave Copperfeather a stern look. Did you read my note? Copperfeather's eyes widened and his jaw fell open. What? You mean that scrap of paper says stop? Yeah, so why didn't you stop? Copperfeather leaned in closer and stared at the little man who was now cleaning his glasses. Wrangle, is that really you? Indeed it is, so why didn't you stop? Wrangle asked for a second time, putting his glasses back on. I don't know. I understood what it meant, but not what it meant, if you know what I mean. Wrangle looked deep into the honest eyes of the policeman and stroked his chin. Well, stop. It means, I believe it or not, stop. Copperfeather shrugged. So why were you standing in the middle of the track? I bring a message that is, shall we say, off the books. Copperfeather arched his back and looked down at Wrangle. Something clicked in his brain and his voice changed. With a stern face and sounding almost policeman-like in an attempt to ooze authority, he said, I assume what you are about to say is legal? Wrangle looked up at the policeman and felt intimidated for a few seconds until he remembered the copper's history. Well, based on your track record, this is reasonably legal. Oh, that's okay then. The policeman's smiley face returned. Indeed. Wrangle gave the policeman a disapproving look as he unfolded the piece of paper. Due to circumstances beyond Mother Nature's control, she has seen fit to reinstate your flying license on, and I stress with the utmost clarity, a temporary basis. Mr. Copperfeather's eyes lit up, making him look instantly years younger. Really? Why now? You are needed in Mother's Landing as soon as possible. There may be a rush to make. Copperfeather grinned from ear to ear like a kid on a caffeine. He shook Wrangle's hand vigorously, bouncing the poor chap off the floor. Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Please stop that now, said Wrangle, pulling his hand free. Oh, of course. Wrangle continued. You have permission to activate your, the man hesitated and sighed, little secret. It was a huge gamble, but slowly and reluctantly he handed Copperfeather his flying license. Well, right here, right now? said Copperfeather, his eyes flashing with excitement. Yes, there may be an arrest to make on Mother's Landing. The policeman turned and ran back to his carriage. Misty poked her head out the window. What's going on? Copperfeather looked at her and produced the world's unhealthiest smile, quite unnatural. Spread across his face from ear to ear. My dear, hold on tight. I've just got cleared for takeoff. Before Misty could question the meaning of his words, Copperfeather was releasing the horses from his carriage and shooing them off into the woods. He nodded to his accomplice George, who understood the meaning and mirrored the process. His beaming smile, testament to his clear delight. Copperfeather bounced back on the driving bench, pulled out a pair of flying goggles and a stiff scarf, put them on. Once the horses were far enough away, he pulled the small panel in the middle of the driver's bench and pressed a big red button. The grin on his face was so wide, like a Cheshire cat who had got more than just the cream, he was in danger of cracking his cheekbones. A swept-back wing unfolded from each side of the carriage, while the rear with the bikes merged into the stagecoach, becoming a rigid one-piece fuselage. A long turning tubular section of metal emerged from the rear and stopped when it was horizontally balanced. At the end of the tube, two smaller swept-back wings unfolded and snapped into place. The carriage itself began to slowly streamline itself, and a joystick propped up from under the driver's box as a thin piece of transparent plastic sealed Copperfeather inside a now fully functional cockpit. Turning to his accomplice, he gave him the thumbs up. After checking his instruments, Copperfeather grabbed the joystick and pressed a green button. We have liftoff, he screamed with excitement and placed his goggles over his eyes. Even though they were not necessarily needed, a huge plume of dust exploded from underneath the carriage as the elevation thrusters fired. After gaining several meters of height, Copperfeather turned his head and nodded as George who was level with him in the second flying stagecoach, George gave Copperfeather a thumbs up. Copperfeather pulled on the lever and the panel rotating from the rear of the carriage onto the steel fuselage, revealing the biggest single jet engine the ledge had ever seen. With his head held high, the lawman punched the accelerator. A couple of tree bears hanging in a nearby canopy stared at one another as the screams of petrified young ladies filled the air and lingered full 5 minutes after the carriage had blasted the tops off the surrounding trees. Little fires that sprang up in the wake of the takeoff danced in the cool breeze. The bears shrugged and went back to doing nothing. Standing in the new blackened ring of burnt forest, Frangle sighed and dusted his shirt down. Mother Nature was going to be furious. His dirty city clothes were clean on that morning. Who was that? The foul odor violating Derek's nostrils was almost overwhelming. Even Captain Tinfoil and his men were momentarily distracted by the offending smell. Sorry, said Barry. I always fart when I'm nervous. Would you be wanting any last words? Said Tinfoil, waving a hand across his nose as the onslaught of Barry's right one caused him to step back. He noting the dark clouds rolling in from the sea. Oh, there'd be a storm brewing. Sudden thud rattled the wooden boards off the deck. There is a storm brewing, Captain, and it's not weather related, thundered the unannounced voice with the oversized boots. I also have a few words I'd like to share with you, starting with, what are you doing here? Tinfoil turned and stared into the piercing black eyes of an enraged Morris. Ah, that be a trick by these fools. He turned and pointed his sword toward King Cogs and Clocks. Yeah, the fool fell for it, Morris said with steely intent while cracking a knuckle. Captain Tinfoil turned back towards Morris. With his anger already near boiling point and enhanced by a stricken duck, the last comment appeared to be one too many. Fool, he screamed. I shall show ye a fool. Man, we be having an uninvited guest, and I be thinking we should be teach him some respect. Nobody moved. The pirates stared at one another, coughed nervously, and looked at their feet. Ah, ye cowards, said Captain Tinfoil and stormed towards Morris. The solid mass of the ex-bouncer stood his ground and yawned as Captain Tinfoil swung his sword toward his neck. This was swift movement. Morris swung out his left arm and caught the blade in the huge shovel of a hand. Captain Tinfoil tugged and pulled at the hilt of the sword, but it would not budge from the vice-like grip. Refusing to let go, Tinfoil felt his feet lift off the deck, and Morris rotated around with a stricken captain swinging his below and maneuvered him over the side of the ship like a crane. A loyal pirate who, at a sudden flash of bravado, stormed towards Morris, swinging his sword wildly. A thick, powerful barrel of a lead kicked him from the henchman's side and connected with the pirate with a sickening crack, sending the assailant high into the clouds. Everyone on the ship watched as the pirate shrank to a small black dot, finally landing in the sea with a very tiny splash. Morris turned to the assembled pirates. Anybody else here feel like they want to be brave? There's of course no, we're fine. Good, and he turned back to Tinfoil, who was still dangling off his sword on the wrong side of the ship's handrail. Now, what am I to do with you? Morris rumbled, his full attention glued to the stricken captain who was beginning to tire. How about you rotate and put me back on the deck, said Tinfoil, staring at the hand, unforgiving concrete of the deck, some distance below his feet. The fall would at best break his legs. Now, why would I do that? You failed me. It'd be not intentional. Help, I'd be losing me grip. I could see that. Tinfoil's hand inched down the hilt of his sword. As quick as lightning, the enforcer swung out a hand and caught the pirate by his feet as his finger slipped from the sword. Pull me over, will you? Tinfoil screamed, dangling upside down. You win! What do you want? Ah, what do I want? Interesting question. Morris yanked the captain over the handrail and unceremoniously dumped him on the deck. Bending over, the walking mass of a thug smiled and punched Tinfoil hard in the face, knocking him out cold. I want someone who doesn't fail me, Morris said. His calm, evil manner was the most sinister aspect of his being. Pirates, he said, those people over there, he pointed towards King Cogs and Clocks, are to be belayed. Before he could issue any more orders, an out-of-control flying stagecoach hit him square in the chest, knocking the huge Man Mountain over the side of the ship. The storm had now crept in, and the rain was making an unwelcome appearance. After intentionally or unintentionally clearing Morris from the deck, Administrator Copperfeather fought hard to control his flying contraption. He swung out towards the sea, followed by the second stagecoach, banked and came into land next to the ship. Below him lay the unconscious figure of Morris. His massive, heavy frame had smashed into the concrete and sunk, creating a body imprint of himself. Copperfeather shrugged and hoped for the chap was all right. It was, after all, a heavy impact. The balding copper glided the stagecoach over the dock and engaged the landing thrusters. Inside, and frightened to death, Misty and half her team prayed and cried, hugging one another. The other half of the team was practicing a similar activity in the second stagecoach. A very heavy bump reverberated through the craft as it landed with the grace of an anvil on the one wheel. Almost capsizing, it rocked from wheel to wheel until it finally came to stand. Everyone okay down there? Copperfeather asked with a tone of concern delivered with a grin he had not dropped since takeoff. One by one, the girls exited the dangerous flying box, their angry glances suggesting they had not enjoyed the in-flight entertainment. Copperfeather looked down bemused, then turned and watched his colleague, George Gingerbiscuit, land with the grace of a lead balloon that had been popped at a great height. Long gave George another thumbs up, lifted up his plastic canopy, and jumped off the jar's box onto the concrete pier. That was great, said Copperfeather to his colleague, who swaggered nonchalantly towards him through the rain. Well, it looks like we have an audience. Copper Gingerbiscuit, that's the name, said, looking up at the dumbfounded faces, looking at them from the LS potato pie. The dripping wet faces belonged to the pirates, gazed to the drizzle at the two lawmen below. Then at the unconscious Morris, finally at Captain Tinfoil, who was stirring with a concussion. What would we be doing now? Patch said. Follow the last order, maybe? Scar replied, rubbing his head. Which was? That depends. Depends on what? Well, which orders we follow? Our captains or that big bugger, said Scar. I see. Scar scratched his head. So, who shall we follow? I think I can help you, said a voice. Patch and Scar turned around and looked into the calm blue eyes of Reg, and he mused, said, How? Well, who pays your wages? Well, that'd be Captain Tinfoil, said Patch. Well, then Reg replied, that wasn't too hard, was it? Let me get a drink real quick. Thank you. The former wolfman then grabbed a piece of wood lying on the deck and swung it to square on the Patch's forehead. Before Scar could comprehend what was happening, the same piece of wood found his forehead, and the two pirates slumped side by side onto the deck. The remaining pirates looked at one another. With nothing else better to do, instinct overcame the situation. They drew their swords, screaming like pirates do. Above the harbor, the dark clouds opened, exposing their full capacity, and rain began to lash down, soaking everything it touched. Little drops of water formed on the exposed metal blades of the swords, catching the odd stray of light as the band of pirates waved them in anger. The roar of the pirates alerted Administrator Copperfeather and his good friend Copper Gingerbiscuit that their services may be required, and the duo raced up the slippery gangplank. On reaching the deck, they ducked instinctively as the sword swept across the area where their necks had been presently seconds earlier. Now that wasn't very nice, Copperfeather said, and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. In a magical blur of brilliance, Copperfeather slapped one handcuff on one to the pirate's arm and the other onto the thin handrail. Shocked at the speed of his apprehension, the pirate tugged at the handcuff and scowled. You have the right to remain silent, and stay silent you shall, said Copperfeather, cracking the pirate's head with a truncheon and rendering him unconscious. He looked across the desk and noticed the broad-shouldered fellow firing off ball bearings at an astonishing rate. He fired and reloaded so fast his hands were like a well-oiled machine. Several pirates rolled on the deck by his feet, holding their heads with agony. The man with the catapult didn't seem to miss. Watching his back was a small, thin man wearing glasses. Always one step ahead of his would-be assailant, he appeared to beep as he looked to the sky for help. The little man also had a big stick, and the big stick was working well as he appeared to calculate every swing. Copperfeather spun on his heel, his sixth sense alerting him to immediate danger, and as quick as lightning, he clenched his fist and caught a pirate right between the eyes. Come on, George, he cried. George Gingerbiscuit was a young, enthusiastic member of the alleged Special Police Force, or LSP, an elite group of policemen that had full jurisdiction all over the ledge. Copperfeather had recruited him because Mother Nature had told him to, and he didn't argue. George was young, strong, and full of life. He was also very clumsy, and this Copperfeather found was his most useful skill. It diverted attention away from his own mishaps. Right behind you, boss! Copperfeather and Copper Gingerbiscuit ran towards a confident-looking man waving a sword at a couple of advancing pirates who had cornered him. Get back, shouted Derek, swinging the solid steel weapon. Pirates advanced, and waving scurvy rafts sliced his sword through the air. The edge of the pirate's blade glinted in the rain, and something went ding in Derek's head, triggering memories of the fencing lessons he had taken when he was celebrating a bumper year in investment returns. And a couple of his champagne chums had rewarded themselves with a break at a park in the center of the forest where they had drunk much, eaten plenty, and for some reason or other participated in the fencing program that was on offer. Donning white suits, a cheese grater face mask, and several bottles of champagne, the boys had enjoyed several afternoons of swigging and swinging of swords. One of Derek's moneyed friends, Count Bartholomew, had drunk a little more champagne than the rest, and when he and Derek stood and fought, Derek won the skirmish after only 15 seconds. Derek smiled at the memory, and as his mind returned to the present, he assumed the attack stance of a fencer and dodged an incoming slicing blade that could have removed his head from his shoulders. Raising his left hand over his head while bending his knees and holding his sword in his right hand towards his opponent, Derek looked like a teapot. Lunging with the sword, he repelled the first pirate's sword as it swung toward his legs. Pitching back and looking like a crab, Derek assumed a defensive posture and made a come on then gesture with his hands and fingers. The lead pirate smirked and lunged towards him. Derek scuttled to the side, deflecting his sword. As the pirate glanced past him, the financial whiz kid whacked him on the head with the hilt of his sword. The pirate collapsed and fell to the ground. The remaining couple of pirates charged towards Derek, shouting strange things for reasons known only to themselves. But before they had a chance of swinging or engaging with Derek, they both fell to the floor, revealing the sweaty faces of Copperfeather and Copper Gingerbiscuit behind them. Thanks, said Derek. And who are you? Administrator Copperfeather and Copper Gingerbiscuit, said Copperfeather, and they pulled out identical police badges. Oh, thanks, Derek said. Derek looked over their shoulders and across the back and spotted a teammate in trouble. Callan! He shouted and ran through the small gap between the two tall policemen. Callan Collinson and his cursed chef hat were holding it their own with his rock-hard stick of French bread. A solid lump of flour, salt, sugar, and margarine, yeast and warm water, not too hot. And not forgetting a secret ingredient, concrete. But the mad chef was now surrounded. Even with his cursed hat, there were just too many pirates advancing fast. And Derek and the two coppers were still too far away. Derek looked on helpless as Colin disappeared into the crowd of sweaty, unshaven grunts. Colin! He screamed. All he could see was the tip of his French stick poking out from the scum. An object skimmed over his head, forcing him to duck. Woo! What a rush! Stan had climbed up the rigging and found a rope that he could swing on. Seeing Colin was in trouble, he jumped and swooped over Derek's head and slammed into the crowd of pirates, sending 3 of them overboard. Stan swung out over the sea, momentarily stopping in midair before beginning his return swing. Woo-hoo! He clattered on into the remaining pirates, taking them out. As giddy as a girl on her first prom day, Stan let go of the rope. He somersaulted and landed on the deck with grace, performing a pirouette on the tips of his toes. High on hyperactivity and drunk on adrenaline, he then bounded along the ship, blindly pushing pirates over the side and completely unaware of what he was doing. You okay, Colin? Said Derek, racing towards his cooking friend, who was now lying face down on the deck. Derek rolled him over and removed his cursed hat as a precaution. Colin, you're bleeding. A groggy Colin peered down at the red liquid oozing from his chest. Oh, the buffers! That was my last one. A look of confusion flickered across Derek's face as he stared at his close friend, who was rubbing his head. Bloody hell, I've got a right headache. Colin spotted the cursed chef's hat by his side. Oh, I see. I need to stem that bleeding, said Derek. And what do you mean, your last one? I mean this. Reaching into a small pocket hidden inside his cycling top, Colin pulled out a small bottle of ketchup that had a hole cut into the side. Derek let out a sigh of relief and smiled, pulled Colin up and gave him a hug. Steady, mate, Colin said. We don't want those pirates getting the wrong idea now, do we? Derek agreed, releasing the walking pantry a little too fast and dropped him back on the deck with a thud. The Wall Street wannabe glanced around the ship. Bernard and Austin were holding their ground for now, and they appeared to be under control. He turned to the coppers. Look after him. I need to find Barry and Reg. George is more capable of looking after him. I'll escort you, George Copperfeather insisted. All right, fine, let's go. At the stern of the ship, higher up on the quarterdeck, Reg and Barry were using the narrow staircase to their advantage. The former Wolfman and the lanky Beanpole were holding their ground using his technique and innovative repelling system. Barry firm. Bleh. Hold on, I got to slow down. Barry, full of nervous wind, was positioned at the top of the staircase with his rear end protruding downwards, bent over and grinning like a constipated snail giving birth to an elephant. He let rip. Fire in the hole! In charge of igniting the dangerous gas, Red gingerly held a match to the high-pressure gas flow, resulting in a berry-shaped human flamethrower. The pirates attempting to ascend the staircase were met with a hot streak of fire, and most had either lost their eyebrows or their beards. The smell of singed facial hair hung in the air. The average pirate is not the sharpest tool in the box, and learning from their mistakes was definitely not in their handbook. For reasons known only to the pirates, they kept on attacking, determined to employ a full-body wax. I'm sorry. I love this chapter. I'm running out of fuel. I need some like sprouts, said Barry. Reg fished through his pockets. Well, got a sachet of less of sugar. Barry shook his head. He bent over again, pointing his backside down the narrow staircase, and grunted while Reg held up the naked flame. His hand red from the onslaught of heat. Instead of a fierce, powerful flash, a shallow flare drooped and fizzled out. Get 'em, lads! He be out of fart fuel! Cried a pirate. Reg grabbed the stick and dashed to the top step. Keep busy, Reg, Barry shouted. I need to refuel. Steve, my name is Steve. How many times? Barry shrugged and sloped off to find something solid and green while Reg engaged the pirates. Being on the top step, the man with the matches held the high ground, which gave him an advantage and balanced out the odds. Reg managed to take out 3 pirates before they overpowered him, picking him up and tossing him over the side of the ship. Drain is eased, thought Reg as his body glided over the ship's rails. His next thought centered on his chances of sustaining a serious injury, and the conclusion being, yeah, the fall will be painful. Below him, the docks were ready themselves for their second victim. Morse was still out cold, but appeared to be in one piece. Red looked down and gulped at the shortening distance between him and the stone-cold slab of concrete. Entering his final descent, he thought that if his calculations were correct, the best he could hope for was a broken leg. Oh dear, he whispered to himself, and gravity began to reel him in. Then something caught his eyes. Woohoo! Stan cried, swinging out from the ship. He held out his hand and caught Reg's wrist right before in time and stopped his fatal descent. Stan swung back over the ship and dropped Reg onto the main deck. Thank you, Alan, Reg shouted. Stan gave him a peculiar look, wondering if he was talking to him. Swung up into the rigging. Like an eagle, he eyed up his next target. Reg, are you all right? Derek said as he raced towards his position. Reg gave him a dirty look. I mean, Steve, he said, correcting himself. Copperfeather looked on in bewilderment. Who's your new friend? Asked Reg, holding out the hand to Copperfeather. This is Copperfeather. Copperfeather, this is, for the moment, Steve. Steve Wolf. Copperfeather scratched his bald head. So, which is it? Steve, look, it's a long story, said Derek. Copperfeather stopped scratching and cocked his head on one side. How about Mr. Wolf? Fine by me, said Reg, matter-of-factly. Derek shook his head. He missed the old Reg. The twang of a catapult directed their ears towards Bernard and Austin, who were running up towards them, hotly pursued by a bunch of pirates. George appeared with Colin in tow, who was softly bouncing the tip of his French stick in his hand. The remaining pirates formed a line across the width of the ship, cutting off the exit gangplank to the dock. Derek and his motley crew of pirate fighters held the bow of the ship. The tide was turning. The rain had stopped, and a hint of sunlight was breaking through the clouds. A feeling of optimism permeated through the financial whiz. Within seconds of looking team all the gear were riding out of the harbor and out onto the last leg of the race. Derek then grinned with weak satisfaction, and a chink of hope opened up. Counting the cyclists, he realized they were a man short, and he knew every member of the team had to finish. His grin grew wider still when he spotted a dim light coming from the window inside the brig on the LS Splinter. And that's the chapter for today. Chapter 19 is Wooden Wheels. That's a short one, but that's what we're going to be reading next, or this coming Friday. And that will be our last chapter. So I hope you'll be here for that. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. It's Like I said, it's one of my favorites, and I love that one. So that's it. I'm sorry to say. That is it for today. I look forward to seeing you again on Friday. Friday will be the, I don't have a calendar on me, so I have no idea what day that is. But it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So 3 days from today. And I'm kind of sorry we're going to be done with this one. I've enjoyed Legend Creation is one of my favorite books. You can get this on Amazon. Hell, I even saw it on Walmart's ad listing. So it's available out there. Get your copy. It is so much fun to read. And that's it. So we'll be reading again on Friday, 10 o'clock. Don't forget, be there and be good. And be good to yourself. So take it easy. Have a good one. And I will see you on Friday.